ethical decision making refers to the process of evaluating and choosing among alternatives in a manner consistent with ethical principles. When we face with a difficult ethical dilemma, we need ethical decision making ability to resolve it. It helps one determine the right course of action or the right thing to do, and also enables one to analyze whether another's decisions or actions are right or good. In making ethical decision, it is necessary to perceive and eliminate unethical options and better select the best alternatives. Think about the last time that you make a big decision. Why did you choose one way rather than taking any of the other options available to you? It is because, in the context of ethical decision making, your ethics are your personal standard of choosing right and wrong. They are your basis for making ethically sensitive decisions. We know that ethical decision making is more like an aspect in our lives. To feel confident about your choices, you need to be aware of the four key drivers of decision making. First is we have the unconscious thoughts. The unconscious thoughts consist of the processes in the mind which occur automatically. In these unconscious thoughts, a mind decides to process a huge amount of information at the extremely high pace. They do this by using what we call these heuristics. Heuristics is enable someone to discover or learn something for themselves. Heuristics use like little mental shortcuts, and these shortcuts help us to manage our complicated mindset efficiently. But there are also negative effects of this thinking to extortion to add decision making. For example, some heuristics function is biases. It can be discriminate against people unfairly or ignore ideas that can support our way of thinking. Second is the unthinking custom and practice. Unthinking custom and practice is all about ethical practice. A family, society, workplace, and friendships, all of these carries ethical principles or a set of beliefs about what is right and wrong. We can easily absorb this belief without either stopping to ask ourselves, do I agree with this belief? Are they valid? It is about having our moral courage to question practices for the majority to accept without questions. Third is we have ethical decision-making profile. It aims to make decisions based on ethical values. People tend to have default settings that use when making decisions. Maybe they tend to think about outcomes, perhaps prioritize their relationship in decision making. Each people has strengths and had also weaknesses. And these weaknesses can be a downfall, leading us to fail and to consider up other important ethical issues. Finally, and most importantly, the last is the reflective practice. It is the ability to reflect on one's action so as to engage in a process of continuous learning. Reflective practice is the mode of conscious decision making. It considered context and people affected by our ethical decision making. Reflective practice, guided by our purpose, values, principles, and exercises our imaginations to think about what solution might be possible. So now, let me call the presence of Rica May Bagasbas and Cherry Morales to continue the discussion.
Hello everyone, my name is Cherry Morales and today I am going to discuss about the ethical decision making, and my part is the step in ethical decision making. There are 6-step model for an ethical decision making. First is know the fact, identify the required information, list the concern, develop the possible resolution, evaluate the resolutions, recommended an action. The first one is know the fact. before tackling an ethical issue, clearly define the nature of the challenge. Often, it can begin simply with a process or decision that makes a leader uncomfortable, that a warning sign. Take the time to explore the issue in detail. Second is, identify the required information. You don't know what you don't know. List the information you will need to obtain in order to make an informed decision. Similarly, identify any assumption being made about the specific ethical dilemma or challenge. A situation can change dramatically once all the facts are known, and making a decision based on incomplete information can be a pathway to disaster. Third is list the concern. Now it's time to explore all the factors that can influence decision. Who are the people involved in ethical issue? What are their individual concerns? What are the pertinent law? Do professional standards and codes of conduct for the specific industry come into play? Fourth is develop possible resolution. At this stage, begin looking in detail at potential resolution and their likely outcomes. This is also an appropriate time to seek counsel from people with knowledge and expertise in relevant areas. Consider creative options that go beyond simple answer. Fifth is evaluate the resolution. What are the project outcomes for each potential resolution in terms of cost, legality, and impact? For example, how would your action as a business leader be viewed if they become public? Would a customer or a corporate partner still want to do a business with a company that made a decision? What would be an industry government broad say? The last one is recommended in action. It's time to decide not making a choice is a wrong choice. Business leaders must work through these steps and arrive at a decision if they hope to retain trust among team member, executive, shareholders, and consumer, and recommendation must also be implemented. Simply choosing a course of action is not enough. Puchin said it must be implemented. Who is going to take an action, and when the follow-up will there be? Maintaining an ethical organization is not an easy task. However, it is an essential long-term success. A business without an ethical foundation eventually will run into trouble, as has been proven time and again. Taking a time to master this step of ethical decision-making is a must for our business leaders. And that's the end of my part, and Miss Rika Mibigasbas will going to continue discussing about the 7th step of moral reasoning model.
Good morning, classmates, and also to our beautiful teacher, Mrs. Crystal Jane Basa. Welcome to our discussion for today. My name is Rika Mivi Bagasbas, your last reporter for today. And the recent reporters have already discussed about the ethical decision making and the step of decision making. So now, our discussion will be focusing on the 7th step of moral reasoning model. First is gather the facts and information. It is essential that in moral decision making, one has to know the general facts of the moral situation before coming up with a moral analysis, more so a decision or an evaluation. Taking notes and pictures of the accident can help gather the facts. For example, you need to take photographs of the road, the vehicles, and the parties. This is the first step because in order to make a good and informed moral decision or moral reasoning, you must first know all the fact and information about the decision. So, ang unang step ay ang pag-gather ng facts. Napakahalaga ng hakbang na ito sa moral reasoning dahil hindi pwede na magdesisyon ang isang tao sa isang bagay, lalo na sa moralidad ng isang bagay kung wala itong kaalaman o hindi alam kung ano ba talaga ang nangyari. Kailangan talaga munang malaman lahat ng impormasyon upang makapagdesisyon ng maayos. Halimbawa, ikaw ay inatasan ng iyong boss na pumili ng isang empleyado na dapat mong isisante. Mayroong dalawang empleyado na pagpipilian mo. Isa ay matanda, ngunit may pamilya. Ang isa naman ay baguhan pa lamang pero kailangan ng trabaho dahil siya ay ang sumusuporta sa kanyang pamilya. Bago ka magdesisyon, ay kukuha ka muna ng karagdagang impormasyon tungkol sa kumpanya at sa mga empleyadong pagpipilian mo. Magtatanong ka kung bakit ba kailangan magtanggal ng empleyado sa kumpanya. Magtatanong ka rin kung sino sa dalawang empleyado ang mas may kakayahang suportahan ang kanilang sarili sakaling mawalan sila ng trabaho. Kakalap ka ng karagdagang impormasyon upang makapagdesisyon ng maayos. Number 2, determine the ethical issues. So after having identified the facts and overall context of the moral situation, the ethical issues involved in the situation must be clearly stated in order to specify what issue want to make a decision. Decision must likewise clearly state the major moral dilemma involved the case. For example, bullying affects all schools. However, public school teachers and counselor often ignore the signs or brush it off when students report something. They prepare to stay out of moral and ethical issues as much as possible to avoid any public complaints from parents. However, it is the moral obligation of adults and students to report and stop bullying whenever possible to avoid escalation. Isa ring mahalagang hakbang sa moral reasoning ay ang pagkilala kung ano ang ethical issue. Ito ang issue kung saan nagkakaroon ng moral dilemma. Mahalagang malaman mo na ang ethical issue bago magdesisyon dahil kung hindi mo alam kung ano ang ethical issue ng isang tao o isang desisyon ay maaaring magdulot ang iyong desisyon ng karagdagang problema. Ayon nga sa aking halimbawa tungkol sa pagsisanti ng dalawang tao, pagkatapos mong makakuha ng karagdagang impormasyon ay may magpo-focus ka naman sa ethical issue. Ibig sabihin ay aalamin mo kung sino sa kanila ang mas maghihirap kung mawawala ng trabaho. Ang ethical issue pag sinisanti mo, ang matanda ay nakasalalay sa trabahong ito ang pag-aaral ng kanyang mga anak. Ang sa batang empleyado naman ay siya ang nag-aalaga sa may sakit niyang ina na nasa hospital. So number 3, determine what virtues, principles have a bearing on the case. Applicable ethical values and principles relevant to the case must be identified and briefly explained in order to justify how much principles could be used and coming up with a decision concerning the moral dilemma. Later on, in addition, the sources of these principles must be acknowledged likewise. These values, principles could came from first, establish philosophical ethical principles, second, socio-cultural, third, socio-political norms and laws, fourth, religious traditions and others. So for example, the scenario may involve the right of ownership of property or the value of human life. If you look at the possible solution to the problem, you will likely identify the moral principles involved. Ang principles that have a bearing on the case naman ay nangangahulugan ng mga bagay o factor na maaaring makaapekto sa iyong desisyon. Halimbawa ay kung ikaw ay isang manager ng isang kumpanya at inutusan kang pumili sa dalawang empleyado kung sino ang sisisantihin. Bago ka pa man magdesisyon ay kailangan mo munang alamin kung sino ang mas karapat-dapat manatili sa kumpanya, kung sino ang mas nangangailangan ng trabaho, at kung sino ang mas malaki ang magiging kawalan kung matatanggal. Lahat ng ito ay matatawag na principles that have a bearing on the case. So, halimbawa, ngayon alam mo na ang ethical issue, ay aalamin mo naman ang mga prinsipyo na konektado sa kaso. Ang mga prinsipyong ito ay maaring ang mga factors na kailangan mong pag-isipan ng maigi dahil malaki ang epekto sa buhay ng empleyadong tatanggalin mo. Sakbang na ito ay aalamin mo kung Sino sa kanila ang mas may kaya, kung sino sa dalawa ang nangangailangan ng trabaho, at kung sino sa kanila ang magiging kawalan kung mawawala sa kumpanya. So number 4, list the alternatives. Ethical decisions making refer to the process of evaluating and choosing among alternatives in a manner consistent with ethical principles. In making ethical decision, it is necessarily to perceive and eliminate unethical options and select the best ethical alternative. So for example, open book and exams, because students can use books and notes. Open book exam encourage students to learn to apply knowledge rather than memorize material. They are usually somewhat less anxiety-provoking than regular tests. So, ang list, the alternatives ay madaling naman nating maintindihan kung bakit isa ito sa mga hakbang ng moral reasoning. Siyempre, bago tayo magdesisyon ay mag-isip naman tayo kung may mas mabuti bang desisyon na hindi natin naiisip o natutuklasan. Kaya mahalagang ilista ang alternatives para maikumpara natin ang mga choices natin kung alin man ang mas mabuting desisyon. Sa halimbawa ng alternatives ay pwede kang mag-rekomenda ang sinasanting empleyado sa ibang kumpanya, at pwede ring mag-isip ng paraan na hindi na lang matatanggal ng empleyado. So, fifth, compare the alternatives with the principles. This step eliminates alternatives as they are weighed by the moral principles, which have a bearing on the case. Potentially, the issue will be resolved here as all alternatives except one are eliminated. Here, you must satisfy all relevant virtues and values, so at least some of the alternatives will be eliminated. Often, you have to weigh principles and virtues. Make sure you have a good reason for all weighing. Sabi ko nga kanina sa principles ay ito ang mga factors na iniisip natin bago tayo magdesisyon, at alternatives ay ang ibang mga choices natin. Sa hakbang na ito ay ating ikukumpara ang mga principles na ating naisip sa mga alternatives natin, dahil baka malay natin ay may alternative solution pala na makikinabang ang lahat, hindi lang ang isang tao. Sa halimbawa, pagkatapos mong malaman kung sino ang may kaya o kung sino sa dalawa ang higit na nangangailangan ng trabaho, ay ikukumpara mo sa iyong mga alternatives, tulad ng alternative na i-rekomenda ang sinisanting empleyado sa ibang kumpanya upang hindi tuluyang mawala ng trabaho, at pwede rin hindi na rin magtanggal ng empleyado para walang kawalan sa kumpanya. So number 6, consider the consequences. If you disclose the information directly, possible consequences include family may feel alienated, cultural values have been violated, family may take a patient to another hospital, patient may give up, patient might be happy they are finally told the truth. If you continue withholding information, possible consequences include patients continue to be fearful and anxious about the treatment. Patients find out somehow and trust is compromised if principles have not yielded a clear decision. Consider the consequences of your alternatives. Take the alternatives and work out the possible and negative consequences of each. Estimate how beneficial each positive and negative consequence is some greater way than others. Ang isa rin sa pinakamahalagang hakbang ay ang pagsaalang-alang natin ng mga consequence o ang mga masasamang dulot ng ating desisyon. Kailangan nating pag-isipang mabuti ang bawat desisyon natin dahil maaaring magdulot ito ng kasamaan sa iba at makaapekto sa kanilang buhay. Sa halimbawa, bago ka magdesisyon kung sino ang sisisantihin ay dapat gamitin mo ang nakalap mong impormasyon upang malaman ang consequences ng napili mong desisyon. Mahihalin tulad ito sa ethical issue o sa principles kung saan isa sa alang-alang mo ang magiging epekto ng iyong desisyon sa buhay ng empleyado. Tulad ng kung anong mangyayari sa mga anak ng matatandang empleyado o nung matandang empleyado kung matatanggal siya sa trabaho, at isa na rin ang batang empleyado na nasa ospital ang kanyang ina. So number 7, make a decision. Ethical decision rarely have pain free solutions. It might be you have to choose the solutions with the less number of problems. Painful consequences. Even when making a good decision, you must still lose. At ang huli ay ang pagdesisyon. Pagdesisyon mo. Pagkatapos mong gawin ang lahat ng hakbang kung saan nakuha ko na ang lahat ng impormasyon, nalaman mo na ang ethical issue at ang mga principles ng kaso. Nailista mo na rin ang alternatives at ang mga posibleng consequence. Ngayon ay kailangan mo nang magdesisyon. Napakaraming dapat isalang-alang sa desisyon mo. Ngunit hindi dapat natin kalimutan na walang perpekto sa mundo. Gayon din ang desisyon mo. Gustuhin mo mang matulungan ang lahat ay malabong mangyari yon. Kaya't isipin mo na lang kung anong desisyon ang mas makakatulong sa nakakarami. That would be all, and thank you for listening. I hope you learned about my discussion for today.